something snappy. And here's an opportunity. September is open. If anybody wants to do a travel talk in September, see me after the program. So, not him. He goes 3 hours and that's way too long to sit in his chest. And October 27th is Valerie Naylor exploring every mile of the U.S., which will segue nicely with road tripping during COVID. So September is open if you care to speak to Lee and Jim about filling in that. As always, we have the hungry hat because it's the library and we always need money. As little or as much as you care to give, and as often as you care to give. We're so happy. So here's Miss Martha, one of the funniest people I have ever known. Don't disappoint me, Martha.
I've got some new lines already. I worked on a couple for you, so I hope they're appropriate for here. Okay. Okay, so first of all, lots of you are wondering in your minds, how could anyone from Mahia, Texas end up in North Korea? Well, just being from Mahia, you should probably already know how I ended up in North Korea. But I'd rather start by giving you a preview of what we do and what we did there, because I think it'll help ease your mind that I'm not quite a lunatic. Quite, I said. I'm quite a quiet one or any of that. So let me move all my things back. So GRS was the company I worked for, Global Resource Services, and we went beyond charity. And so here is a preview of what we did in 5 minutes.
On the front, it's on the front.
Yeah. It's all right. Y'all don't really need to hear the music. I'm sorry? I don't know. Yeah. Thank you. Look pretty.
Are you sure that thing's going straight?
We'll clarify in a minute. All right, so from that, we'll move into what I was doing there. I think you probably saw some of me there in some of those videos. GRS was a humanitarian organization. It is no longer working since back in, I think, 2017, during that administration, they cut off all ties going into North Korea. And even when you were invited in. I was always invited in. If you want to look, you can see my visas from the government that allowed me to come in and let me come and do work. And so I didn't run across the border or sneak over in a balloon or anything like that. They all knew I was coming and looked forward to me coming many times. We had 4 different programs, agricultural programs. So I think you saw some fields, some soybean. We made soybean tubu and we gave it to local schools. Infrastructure, we went into hospitals and brought in generators and all kinds of things that they didn't have. Then healthcare, we brought in medicines. We usually brought the people who were the doctors, surgeons, to America in New York. They can come here. The United Nations is in New York, and they can be in New York in a 25-mile radius in New York, and so they usually were trained at hospitals there. And then if the United States State Department allowed us, we would travel with them here, and you'll see some of that. And so they would, healthcare usually came here to train and learn. One of the biggest notes as we were visiting a hospital there was when they noted they were having from gallbladder surgeries about, I think, 300 deaths a year. And after being trained in the United States on laparoscopy, and I won't say medical words very well, I don't say English words very well either, but after being trained there, they cut down to 2 a year, sometimes less, but there was a couple of times. So just by being trained on updated techniques that we all take for granted, their lives were greatly enhanced. And so that was the healthcare program, and education, that was where I worked. And as you can see, I was the female of the group who got to travel with this wild group of guys. It was lots of fun traveling with them. And each of us, when we came into the country, we always traveled together. When it was someone else's program that day, we were going to a hospital or whatever, the other person took on the cameraman or note taker or whatever needed. So that's how we helped each other in our program. So here we are, we're down in Wonsan, which is a port city. We had traveled down there about a 4-hour Land Cruiser drive over some rough roads. Very, very rough. Okay, now, I saw some of you said that's not North Korea. You're right. So one of the things, you're very correct and you know your geography very well. So one of the first things that I was tasked with doing is training people, whether they were coming from the United States to North Korea or from North Korea coming here. And we found that horses were a very, very good way to use training. Because culturally, how do you put a different culture for people to learn? Because that's the key of working with others, is to understand them, to know them, to not get hurt by them. A horse is a pretty good way of being with others and training and learning so that you don't get hurt. And so we would bring our US people before they could go, they would come and we did training with them there. And then we also brought our North Korean partners. There was a GRS North Korea. We had people on our team in North Korea that their government appointed, and we brought them here, and we also trained so that when they were working with foreigners, especially Americans, they knew how Americans would deal. And so we use this technique of horses, of learning how to listen to them, learning that, you know, their eyes are on the side of the heads, and so, you know, they're weary of you. And so you just don't walk up and start, and that's how North Koreans are. They're weary of me because I'm the enemy. They're told since a baby, I'm the enemy. And so learning how to approach them, how to work in their culture, that's the first step that we did. The next part of the education program, the next phase that I started growing into was supplies. I did a lot of supply work before I ever did some of the other work. So you see these are big rolls of newsprint that we sent in every year so that they could print their textbooks. We didn't give them textbooks, but we gave them the supplies so that they could be partners with us and print their textbooks. We also helped with some musical instruments, music, technology. Again, we had to follow the laws that were sanctioned by the US government at that time, and so we'd have to get the code book out and say, can we take in this type of jump stick? And I had bought a bunch of two gig, thank you. And I read through the thing, and that was not allowed. But 1 gigs were allowed. So I had to go rebuy some more, and I had a bunch of 2 gigs left over in my pocket for a long time that I used for many, many years and gave out to Chinese students because they could have them. But in North Korea, I couldn't take a 2 gig jump stick in. And so following those types of rules. We also helped with food and more. The jackets you saw, we provided jackets to students, to kids, food, aid, as part of the USAID program that gives food in North Korea. And that's how we began our work in 1995 there. All right, here's some pictures of some of the supplies, a cello, some books. I did actually also take some regular English books, a printer, and you see the kids there at the school where we had some food for them. The next big phase of my work was seminars. And I worked with the University of Foreign Language. PUFs is how we called it. And if you hear me say PUFs, I'm not talking about something else, I'm talking about school. So Kim Il-sung University got in on the end because they saw some of the benefits of the training we were doing. So these seminars would bring around 10 to 12 professors to Beijing. That was safe for me, but it was also a safe place for them because Beijing is like their big brother. And big brother wouldn't let them act out, wouldn't let them run away, would make them follow a lot of the similar rules that they had in Korea. And so it was a very neutral ground. We talked about the training with the horses. They felt secure, we felt secure working there. We also had free access to internet, So doing some of our training using internet, where if I were training in DPRK, the internet would not be so accessible for us there. It's called an intranet, stays in the country, and it doesn't get out, and they put what they want on there. And so it would have been really difficult to Google some things there. It just wouldn't have happened as much, and do some of the research that we were doing. And so this was a very popular place. It also was a place where I lived, and so it's comfortable for me to have them come and be there for about anywhere from 10 to 3 weeks training, whatever we could do with that. So here are some pictures from some of the training, and they put them up there to kind of help. This is the university that we worked with. You see in the corner there picture. You see the picture beside there looks like a chef. Well, one of the main things we found very quickly was that food is a common denominator. And putting out food, we could talk about a lot of things. And introducing them, imagine when I go to Korea, I'm eating kimchi and rice and some different types of soups most of the time, except for if it's a Western dinner that they provide. So I know what their ration and staple is, their common staple is. But imagine when they come there, they get to experience Chinese food, they get to experience Italian food, Thai food, barbecue, a Brazilian restaurant. We took them there where you can get all the meat you could want, and they were so happy at that restaurant. And we soon found some of their favorite restaurants, and so whenever a new group came in, we would take them to their favorite. Their least favorite was, we call them pot stickers, those dumplings. They did not care for those and everything, and so we didn't do that. So it was a real great way to sit around the table and talk about life. And I got questions about, well, how do you deal with this as a teacher? Well, what about your family? Well, what about this? What about that? And we soon found out that we were all pretty much wanting the same thing out of life. We wanted our children to do well and to learn, or our students to do well and learn. We wanted our families to be happy and to have enough, whatever that was for each person, to have enough. We found that we really didn't want to hurt one another. We found that there was more we had in common than not. And those were some of the best times. And usually we also had a lot of beer during that time. They always, we would have lunch, and I was always surprised how much they could drink and then go back and still go to class in the afternoon. And I couldn't do that. I was like, no way, guys, that's too much, you know. But they did that and enjoyed that. You'll see here, one of the professors, we often taught them and then had them get up and teach. If we were teaching folk tales, then I would tell them, teach me a folk tale from your country. Or teach me, if we were doing English, show me how you would, if I was teaching a method, teach me how, use this method now and teach the class. So it wasn't just me teaching. In fact, if you'll drop down, you'll see a lady that's not me. We brought in professors who were willing to come into Beijing, and again, it's a safe place. Most people were willing to come. Professors from different universities to come in and teach in Beijing, but they weren't all, I could never find anyone willing to go in North Korea with me to teach. And so that's another reason. You see at the other corner, we went, in Beijing was great because there's a lot of international schools there. And so we would take them to see how other schools were functioning and working. And they couldn't believe, like one of the big Beijing international schools had a swimming pool at their school, and they're like, this is a high school and they have all of this? They were amazed at the schools and what they had, the students, that they could ask the students, these were all English professors, so they could ask a student a question and the student could reply just like that and knew whatever they're talking about. They enjoyed seeing how they were learning. In the middle is we also, as I said, culture is a great way, not only food, but sports. And I'm a PE teacher is how I began my career, is teaching PE. And so I love sports, and I believe for all of the students who sit in the classroom and it's really hard to sit and be still and to do the work, that sports is a great way to learn and to participate. And so I know with the Korean professors, there were some of them who needed to get out on the ski slopes or on the golf range or on the bowling alley or learn frisbee golf or something. And so every time we learned a new sport whenever they came, or we repeated one if it was popular. And so this is in Beijing out at the ski place where we went skiing together. The final thing I found that was really productive in these learning opportunities to cross-culturally understand each other better was the arts. So this final picture is where we brought in some musicians from the States and some artists, and we let the exchange go back and forth. And the musicians from the States would play something, and the next thing I know, I didn't know these English professors knew how to play anything, and they'd walk over and pick up a guitar, and they were singing a song, and all the Koreans would gather around and sing the song with them. And so, again, painting, they didn't like the painting as much, but music is a big key to their culture and to opening doors with them. And so that is what a lot of our Beijing seminars were, and they were a lot of fun, and I enjoyed them. I put a blank in there so I could just be blank. All right, any questions up to this point?
How long were you there?
I started going in and out of North Korea in 2002.
Didn't go every
And I
year?
went, so I was in and out almost every other month from that time. So we mark, us people who talk to professionals who say they go in, so the way you talk is, well, how many times have you been into North Korea? Oh, well, I've been in 3. Well, they're a novice, okay? When you say I've been in there over 100 times, then that's saying something. And so, yeah, I definitely did that. Yes?
For the students that travel to China, that seemed like a bit of an economic shock, because North Korea is extremely poor, and China these days is very wealthy. Is that a fair statement?
Everything was a shock for them to be in China, which was good. It helped them realize what they were being told. I didn't have to say you're being sold a bill of lies, or maybe it's not all the truth. Uh-oh, we got some help if anybody needs to go, I understand. It's pretty good size, they're saying, so if I need to pause, go ahead, what do you think?
That's why we have insurance.
That's right, okay. So your question is really good. One of the best examples that they did was, we were riding in a car and they looked out and they saw a Hyundai. And they said, Hyundai? Who makes Hyundai? And I said, South Korea. And they said, oh, no, they don't. I said, oh, yes. Yes, they do. And they said, no, they don't. We know that they are poor and they have nothing because America took everything from them. So, that, they would see other Korean-made, South Korean-made things at things. So, you know, it was really good financially. For them coming here, we supported their coming and learning there. So it was like a scholarship. But being in the place where they were was really eye-opening to me. And to see everything that they had open to me. Yes, yes. I'm sorry? Always. Always. I mean, and it's part of that building that relationship that's so important. And to have the same person see them every time because my sister told me to come in my car, not her car. Just a thought that passed through my mind. Anyway, the relationship is what builds it. They were, was it just only professors? So never had this, everything you saw students, now these students, right. And these right here are, I'm in North Korea now, as you can tell by a couple of the places. And if you note here, and here, they wear a badge over their heart of the great leader. And if you notice, I've got my picture there and I look like, you're never supposed to take a picture like that. So that was a sneaky one that I got by with. But I was never supposed to take my picture with great leaders. Okay, so why do the North Koreans want to send their professors there? The training that they got, they wanted to learn American English. They didn't want British English at all. It had to be American English. And we even did a lesson on how do you say this in England? How do you say this in America? We would do those types of things. But it was, so let me explain how the government works there. There's 85% who do the bidding of the rest of the government. 85% of the population. Then there's 15% who do the bidding of the 1%. The people who are in power. So the 15%, they know what's going on with the 85%. And they're trying to help open the doors for them to have better access to all things. They're like sitting down with, we called them our host when we were there, and I always had a host with me. And my host, sitting down with them and learning about how much their ration of the food they got, 300 grams of rice a week. So you do the work, math on that, and look at that. I'm not in the grams, and I never translated that very well, but there was not, you only got what the government gave you. There were stores I went in, I bought things there, books and not Coca-Cola, you can't get that there. You can get an off-brand of Coca-Cola there, but there are things you can buy there, but they are only in the hotels for the foreigners who are traveling there. So they're not for the everyday citizen and everything. So the reason is, for these 15% that we work with, we didn't work with 1%. We worked with the 15% of the government, and they were trying to find ways to open up access and learning abilities to them. And also, we found out later, half of the professors that we trained, about 75 who went through our training, when we met their kids out at tourist sites, that they'd been in their class learning American English. And several of them would say, oh yes, I had Professor so-and-so, and I go, oh yeah, I remember training him in Beijing. And they're like, yes, are you Miss Martha? Yes. So it helped them in their own community and in their own society.
Was the 300 grams, was that the person or the family?
Per person. Per person. So I did eventually move to teaching in Korea, but that was very, very monitored. It was only when I went in, and it was with a minder or a host. Let me use that word beside me. And the host, I would ask the host, I would like to ask the kids blah, 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 blah. And they would say, yes, that's fine. Usually, as you see, they're laughing because usually they would ask me a question and I had no idea what they were going to ask me. And so off the cuff, I would have to answer some very strange questions like, why do you hate North Korea? I don't hate you guys. I'm standing right here with you. No. So, we would have some fun, or I would teach them Chinese, and that really made them laugh. So, but that was the way it went for a while. We also had some classes for some of their students in Beijing, and we taught them. This is the young man we met out at a touring facility that had been a part of a student at the school. Here are the kids doing their daily exercises. Okay, so now you see, I'm giving them a little more freedom. In this class, this is the last time I was in the country in 2014. And so, here's the teacher over there. This is the teacher. It's not the host. I'm asked to go to the front of the class, and I don't know if you can see, we're on Unit 3, Exercise 4, Investigate Ireland. So I'm supposed to talk about Ireland. There you go. I had very little information on Ireland that day. I just walk in and start asking them questions. What have they been learning? Which was actually a better way of helping them learn. And then they could talk about, and we would use it to compare to what I did know, America or China or other places I had lived. And so, as you see, a student stands when they ask a question. And then they're very, very attentive to your answer. And listen, and this is a student who came at another time and was in Beijing here with us. And so finally, like I say, by the last time I was put at the front of the class, I was allowed to teach, allowed to talk without anything. Another part of my job was hosting. And this is in Beijing. Everyone from the U.S. had to come to Beijing because the embassy, DPRK, was there. We had to go down, get their visa, and then they would take the airplane and fly into Pyongyang. And so we hosted a lot of people there at the office. This is my office manager in Beijing. She and I are really good friends, and she eventually, she's Chinese, she immigrated to America and lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Bless her heart. So and this is a delegation that was going on their way to America. And these men came through, and they were in Beijing. I hosted them in Beijing, took them to meals, made sure they needed to buy anything for their trip. We did all that kind of stuff, and then put them on the airplane to the U.S., to New York. So here's a group that I came through. We're actually in Korea, but they came through and I got to go in. Here is the ambassador to the UN, his wife, and a traveling partner. Very often, if you notice, they aren't alone with me. So, if you notice in this picture, there's a couple of ladies who are buying them, and they are some of what I would call very VIP. This young lady here is when former President Trump met with Kim Jong-un and they talked. She was one of the translators in that group. And as I said, she's the ambassador to the UN at that time. Right. And so we're at this place, we're at the Grand Canyon. So we got permission to travel with them. And I was on the plane with them from New York to Atlanta.
You were the minder.
I was a minder. From Atlanta to Dallas to Arizona. It was quite a trip, and back to New York. It was a wild trip. And then this lady she pulled me aside, they never were to be along with us and asked me to take her shopping. And so I was like, oh my gosh, is this a test? And so we did, we went shopping, it was very nice, we went, she wanted her haircut, we did haircut. We did so many things that just you do with your best gal friend. And we had really good conversations about life. She traveled, her father's one of the military leaders, very close to the upper 1%. And she talked about what it's like to travel and leave your family behind. And if you note, leave your family behind. That's a good way to make sure, there you go, you come back every time. And we went shopping for clothes and many, many things. And so these were some VIPs that I got to host, and it was very fascinating spending time with them. Okay, is there sightseeing in DPRK? Yes, I did that. My last trip in was in September 2014, and I took a train trip with a bunch of Brits. Now, that trip was very interesting. We got on the train in Pyongyang, and then we went all around and then came back to Pyongyang. And at the train station, the Brits were allowed to get off. I was asked to remain on so that we didn't shock any of those in the small communities with a foreigner. So, especially someone like me, so I stayed and remained on. So there is sightseeing. This picture here is in the subways. They're really beautiful, and they'll take you down and let you ride the subway system there. They're very proud of it. It's very clean. You can eat off the floor. It's very clean. That's what impressed me the most. This is a site you get to go to, and you get to bring some flowers with you, and you get to go and put those flowers and pay your respects to the great leader and everything. And I'm sorry?
Who are those two?
This is Kim. This is the leader who passed away in 2011, Kim Il-sung. And this is Kim Song-il. And Kim Jong-un is currently. So I have to be very careful. And you're asked to go, and in Asia, the way we show our respect is to bow. And so you go to the statues and you bow. And some people have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that, because if you understand the culture, if you come here, you would show respect in another way. And so that's how you show respect. And you go, and they take you to many statues of these guys. I went to their little home where they were born, and many places that you get to pay honor and respect to them. This is the DMZ, and my friend across the way, this was my assistant in Beijing. She's from Austin, Texas, and she is over on the North Korea side, and I'm over on the South Korea. So we thought that was appropriate. Okay, the big tower is the Jukje Tower, which you can get in an elevator and go all the way to the top. If you study anything about North Korea, you will understand that there is what some people might call a religion, but it's Jukje, and this is the religion of self-reliance. This idea of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. And so this is a tower to that belief. And they follow that. If you read some of the books, they talk about the Jukje power and how it enables them to overcome the many obstacles that they've had in their country.
How do you spell that, please?
J-U-C-H-E. And if you're really interested, I've got a really good book that's very interesting on it. I've read it. It's from a religious perspective, but it's just very interesting because that's how, when you look at their books too that are up here, that's how they perceive it and everything. So there's Shelby and I again. We're on the square there.
What city?
This is in Pyongyang. the main, capital city. These pictures, well, this one was a time when I went at the tours with the Brits. And this is when we were there with a 150-man choir. And we just put them in on the bus, and we decided we want a picture.
You were happy.
And so we asked our host, we would like a picture. Can we get a picture? They're like, of course you can have a picture. And that's the key, asking, not doing. And they came out and took the picture for us. And so we're laughing and very happy because we had the day before just got left on this square that we have 5 buses full of men going to the choir event that we were supposed to be performing at, and we had been passing out tickets on all the buses to these guys, and the bus we're supposed to be on takes off. And we're in the middle of this square at night, and this is not a place you want to be by yourself without your host. And we were very, let's just say, I've never ran so fast to catch up with my bus and knock on the door and jump on. So we're laughing that we are still able to take pictures, and we feel very happy to be there and take these pictures and not be in.
Martha, who were the choir?
It was a group of men from Georgia.
All right.
You'll see them in a minute. No, state of Georgia. So one of the big things you do as a tourist is go to this. They no longer have it right now. So I'm going to give you a little feel of it. Sorry, this thing on. So what's some of the, those are people with cards. And that's Korean language that says something like, yay, we're the best. Whoa, go, Kim Jong-un. Those kind of sayings, you know?
Yeah.
Feed America. No. No, there were some of those, but not in this. Notice the flag is involved in it. Yes, yes. And that choir is down there. If you saw the people in the choir, they are there. They also had what I call them patriotic performances that we got to go and participate in. And you see the military choir, people down there. And this soccer field is full of people. I mean, this doesn't, oh, well, that's not on the wall, is it? So during these performances, there was a lot of things you and I as foreigners would not know. They were letting their people know. And there's colors, red, the Workers' Party. There's a flower that is only for Kim Jong-il. It's named after him. It's only, you can see it there. I saw it many times. It's beautiful. Guns. When Kim Jong-il gave over his power, or let his son come into power, it was done by handing him a gun. So that's very important.
That's what that represents.
Yes.
The
power.
The passing of power.
Right.
Those guns.
Right. At this time, at this thing, the Kim Jong-un has not stepped into power. We are still under the Kim Il-sung era at this point. And the father has passed away. Is while I'm here at this picture. Cultural exchanges was another part. This is a group of them that traveled with me another time. I got to take them from China to New York to the University of Mississippi, and we were hosts there. And this is a group of them. These are all, we were trying to, I don't know if you remember when the Philharmonic went to New York. The New York Philharmonic went to New York. If you remember that time, go and look it up. They did. They traveled to Pyongyang and they performed there. Well, they were told that they would be an opportunity to be reciprocated and come back here. So we were trying to work on that, and so this is what we were working on. And then something happened that didn't, and I'll tell you in a minute, but as every good teacher, you keep people guessing for a while.
Were they able to understand the people in Mississippi speaking English?
It was always like this, Miss, come here. All right, one of the big cultural exchanges that we took part in was the Spring Arts Festival. And we would bring different musicians from America, like a 150 voice choir, male voice choir, and let them perform there. Well, this is a group that we took in 2010. Now, this goes on for a while, so I'm not going to just let you hear that performance of theirs, but they were so impressed with this group, Casting Crowns. I don't know if any of you know them, but they were so impressed with them, they immediately took them from their performance to a recording studio to have them record. They sang a song during their performance called White Dove, which is kind of like this country, tis of thee. I mean, it is a very popular Korean song. It's not their national anthem because it talks about a white dove. And so they were asked to come and record it. They only have one station in North Korea, and they were able to play and record it and then put it on national TV. And it played a lot while we were there, and we got to see it a lot. So here you go. Oh no, Martha did it. I knew I would. Martha always forgets these little
Those buttons.
they give me every time. I apologize, folks.
So they were singing in Korean, the people who came from?
Yes, well, please, let me figure out my. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry, guys.
No.
Okay, we'll get it and we'll go back. Apologies. Sorry, it's not very good. So to answer your question, they sang this song in Korean and in English. You're hearing it in English right now, but we had people on our team to translate it and compose it, and then they sang in English, and they'd never heard that song in English before, which was the caveat to get them recorded. And this is their recording studio.
Whose recording studio was it, did you say?
I'm sorry?
Whose recording studio did you say?
The Koreans.
Oh,
They were taken to their television recording studio
yeah.
and recorded there. This is another group we brought in of a family, all musicians trained from Juilliard, and they came in, and they were more classical trained. They did violin and cello, and we took them to the university to let them engage with and interact with students.
so classical and traditional music the only kind of music they allow on their?
Yes, there's not any, like the K-pop is really popular. So we went to karaoke places, and one of their favorite things for me to sing was "Country Roads Take Me Home." I'm really glad I knew that song, and it helped out. But that was the brunt of rock and roll there. There was no rock and roll. The same as in China. They don't let other influences in. The end of this is what is, to me, powerful, that 3 students just got together and played their instruments. And for me, someone who seeks how we can have peace with one another, I think this says something. The other thing we did was we would take and go to these massive field days. And so here I am out with a camera, and these kids have never seen themselves ever in a photo. And so I'm taking their picture and then showing it to them. And then I got my picture taken doing that. And so anyway, so that's what we're out doing, and just being with the people. And it was very free there to talk and visit. My Korean language skills got really good. As I first went in, I didn't know any. And it got better as I kept going there. They were always saying, "Miss, your Korean is getting better every time you come." And I said, "I know, keep asking me. I was just gonna get really good." So here's the male chorus. They're singing a popular Korean song everybody knows. And this is the crowd's response to their singing. And they sang this song in Korean. Here it goes. 반갑습니다. 반갑습니다. I don't remember all the other words. Just 반갑습니다. And I would stand up going, 반갑습니다. And what it means is you're welcome. Welcome, you're welcome here. We want you here. And that's what that is. And so if they're singing, that's what they were saying, we hope, to those people. Then the day the music died. We were in the country when the leader, not the current leader, but the other, Kim Jong-il, died, and we were with Scout. We didn't know that was going on at that time. But we got back to Beijing and heard the news and realized it was usually, the goodbyes at the airport, they're not dragged out, but they're a little more friendlier than what happened that day. Here's your bag, get on the plane. And so we had to finish up with a project we were doing, so we were invited. This was in December. We came back in, I think it was around February, and they were holding these big patriotic performances. And everybody was going to them. And so we went into this massive building, one that bigger than I've ever been in. And it's filled with people. And we're brought in as everybody else is already seated. And we're kind of, almost feel like they want to put a bag on your head and bring you in and sit you down. They don't really want to see you coming in, or that's how I felt. But anyway, just watch this. I think it helps you to understand more, and then you'll have plenty of time for questions, because this is it. This is the first leader with the cap. This is the leader who just passed away while we were here at this showing. Kim Il-sung, that's the president who just passed away. Now we see Kim Jong-un. It's like you're... I'll tell everybody. Remind me about haircuts. Okay, so I think you saw some things there that we talked about earlier about guns and passing them on. Someone commented about the haircut, so we were free to go around, like a couple of I was the only female, I did not go get my hair cut when I was, okay, I'm just gonna put it out there, I wasn't that brave. But several of our men swore by the haircuts there, and they went in and they liked to get the shave, you know, and everything, and so they would go in, and I went by, and they told me where they were gonna be, where the barber shop in the hotel, and so they went in, and I looked, and on the wall, there was a picture, and you pick which haircut style you wanted. And there was one that was very popular, if you can imagine, the new leader that stepped into place. And so, anyway, everything is very much, yes, uniform control. So, I'm done. I'm sure you have lots of questions. We were able to move any place in the country where we were asked to go. As long as it had to do with what we were doing and we were giving a service. So when we were there working, we were, you know, always given where we wanted to go. There were some negotiating skills with that and everything, but we usually got what we needed to perform our thing. And everything we tried to do on the partnership, half they had to do, or 3/4, or a third, and we would come up with the rest. So like they had to get the fields, we brought in the soybeans, so things like that. So what kind of questions did you might have at this point? Yes.
Standing up to ask a question.
Yes.
Who funded your group?
We were funded by several different organizations. One of the biggest funders were the U.S. government. Because we wrote for grants and got grants, and that provided a bunch of our money. And then we were also providing, probably our next biggest donors were just odd, strange people. The lady that you saw, I have to, real quick, there was a lady where we were in there, and she raised, I forget how many thousands of dollars to go so that we could go over and do goat inseminations in North Korea. And so she raised all this money and she wanted to come over. And that was a time we were really glad to have females on the group, because we were gonna do this on days, and the way that they do that, these little things that they use, they had to have a way to know what day they went in. So they painted, I sat down and painted all these little strings that were coming out their bones and stuff. And I didn't put them in, I just painted the little thing that went in there and everything. And so, as I said, I'm education, but I did a lot of things that were not educational at all. So, but those were our biggest funders, were usually individuals who had some kind of, that we would learn about, like people I knew in the States, and I would say, hey, you know, would you pitch in? But the majority of a lot of our funding came from there.
Was your hotel room bugged?
Of course, there was a big mirror that was a two-way, and so, you know, you didn't dress there in front of that. There was always, I mean, none of us ever got a room side by side, because the room beside you, they were in, you know, making sure of what's going on. So yes.
They have internet access at all?
No, we took in, when we came in, we handed our phone over, and we could only take in devices that had no Wi-Fi or any type of, you know, no use like that.
If you turned on the TV or the radio, it was just pure.
We had one station, and it was usually this lady talking news, and they would have war movies. And they were very interesting. All in Korean, everything was in Korean. And so if you stayed in the Foreigners Hotel, they had sometimes CNN International, sometimes, but not all the time. Most of the time we didn't stay in the Foreigners Hotel. We
Did you
stayed
get newspapers from anywhere other than?
this, the Pyongyang Times. In English. Yes, and there's some books up here that we could get, but no, we did it, I did her saw any in the local hotel,
Could read the signs.
yeah, yes.
What was the most beautiful scenery that you got to visit while you were there?
There was a pass we went over and it almost killed us, and yet it was so beautiful. And so it's about an hour as you're on your way to one side. So there's a big, here's Pyongyang, and you come out and you go over here to one side on this side. And so there's a big pass, and it was beautiful, and it had, oh, that's a great story. It had a road house, and so you had to spend the night because the roads were really bad and you couldn't go. And so we pulled into the roadhouse one night, and we had our little soup and stuff, and then we went to our rooms, and I'm laying in bed reading my book, and I'm using a little light on it because I've already been told that probably the lights might not work outside the city. So I'm sitting there, and the lights are working, it's great, and then I hear my door go. And then I hear someone crawl along the floor, and then I hear it click. And I think, oh my gosh, this is my first trip in. And the guys didn't tell me everything because I think they wanted me to be a little, like, have some fun. And so anyway, they left, and in the next few moments, I hear a generator start, and the lights all come back on. And so she had just come into the room to flip the switch so that we could have the generator would work and everything. But this road house was on a beautiful, beautiful lake. There was no, I mean, there's no pollution there. The skies are blue. The White Dove song talks about our skies are blue. They should be cloudy and gray because there's no production going on.
When it's starting to bright at night.
I wasn't usually out at night, okay?
There's no city lights. So
No.
there's-
Well, there's till about 8 or so, I think, there's city light, but
On the road, on the.
yeah. We were always in our room by usually 7 at night.
Yeah. No windows to look out.
You can, but you're usually looking out on parking lots, or when we stayed at the State House, which is a government-run facility, it was about, 5-10 miles out of the city of Pyongyang, the main capital city, and it was a compound. And so we were on the compound and everything.
There's no lights for security.
Right. So, yes, ma'am.
When you taught English, did you have a specific, did you come in with your own materials, or did
No.
they? Yeah.
You taught what their books and stuff.
Okay.
I just taught it with my own brand of Texanese, so. So it was special.
What kind of subjects do they have in their schools? I mean, when they teach history, what are they thinking?
So I almost brought, I have a couple of their books because I said, I give y'all books all the time, I'd like some of your books, so they did. But I didn't bring them tonight, I'm sorry. History, but if you take time and you look at any of these books that are written, you'll see it's very much pointed and written in a way that is common to what they believe and their narrative as they know it. We took that group of 150 men, some who served in the Korean War, and they stood there and said the Americans lost. And I'm telling you, that broke my heart because those men were just crying. And they had to stand there and not react, I go, oh, heck no, we didn't lose, or whatever. So there's their own and brand and narratives. I think we're used to that here.
Alternative facts. Alternative facts.
Yes, well, whatever, I don't want to get that way, but political, but I will say that, we have facts that we listen to sometimes, and some people agree to those and some people don't. So they have the same system there. But it's very narrow. It's very narrow, and there's not any room for.
So Kim Jong-un stays president until he dies? Is he
Right.
president for life, or where?
Right. There's only 2 ways that could possibly change. One would be a coup, and that would never happen there, because if you saw the tears and stuff at the end, there's a belief that this is good. And I don't understand it, but it is truly that's the belief there. And so to have some kind of uprising would be really difficult for me to imagine. So the other way would be like his father, he get a certain age, and they're saying in the news that I've been reading that he's looking towards his daughter. Now, whether that's true or not,
Who is looking?
Kim Jong-un has a daughter that has been seen with him as he's been looking at parades and doing some of the function as president of the country, as the great leader there now. He's not the great leader, he has another name, but anyway, that he could turn it over just like it was turned over to each one. That there would be a point where he'd say, this is who I want to lead next.
Is he considered divine?
Yes, if you pick up a book, they have 3 people, and I don't know how he has figured in since then, but I read a book, and the grandfather, is known as God, and the other one, his terminology is like a Jesus Christ kind of figure, and then the Juche that I talked about is like the Holy Spirit, if you want to put it into Christian theology and how they name it. And the grandfather was raised in a church. His mother was, they attended church. So it seemed like some of this theology has been transferred.
Well, how they treat women over there, what's their philosophy?
Well, most of them they have to work because that's part of everyone there works, except for, I guess, the up 1% doesn't. So they all work, but yet they still have when they get home, they have the same role as any 1930s, 1950s woman would in the United States. You know, cook, clean, care for the children, shop, do that, while the men go out and have fun. Except for one night, I got one of the women to go out, and she went with us, and we had some fun, so she probably got in trouble when she got home. So. Anything else you would like to know? Yes?
Are people starving to death in North Korea?
I tell people that children, yes. Mainly the children. And it's mainly the 85%, and that was, I mean, you know, it's almost 10 years since I've been there, and that was when I first started going in. So they've had massive food. But yes, I've seen children that, you know, the pictures we don't get those pictures here. We don't, you notice I don't have those pictures to bring out to you and show you when I visited hospitals and places. Those pictures I don't have. But yes, I saw it.
So you were learning Korean language, do you also speak Chinese?
Even, yes. I mainly learned, I lived in China mainly to do my work. My focus, I studied at a Korean university. And so Korean is my first language, and English is my first, Korean, Chinese, and some other.
So North and South Korea speak the same Korean.
It's the same Korean, except for they use words differently. So like there's the word called pakuda. And pakuda in South Korea means to be busy. Over here in the North, it means need help. So you have to learn to use it correctly. And so automatically when I spoke, they knew I spoke more of a Southern version. And they were like, and that, it just makes sense because you can say, well, how could I learn Northerner? You know, where do I go to learn North Korean? North Korea. And they call it, in South Korea, Hangul, and in North Korea, we call it Chosun Mao. And they're Chosun, if you say it in Korean, Chosun, and Hangul in South Korea.
Well, they have their own currency, right?
Yes.
Sure. Well, is the lack of food money?
The lack of food is producing and giving to the people who need it. Did you see some of the leaders?
No, I didn't.
Me and them could go around, you know? At the table, we could find really good.
So where the people live, they can't have like a family, they can't have a garden in their yard and grow food. or-
That's black market.
It's all very controlled, everything's controlled.
Right, it all goes to one central place so that we can help everybody.
Yeah, that's the community.
Nice.
So, there were, supposedly some markets where people could go and get things. But of course, I never saw those or was taken to those places.
It wasn't common. You'll figure out how to grow some more, make some sprouts.
No, the only time I ever saw anything industrialized was when we were doing this beautiful over, and this is where they want to put a ski resort, but having the resources and bring tourists in. So anyway, this is one of their ideas they told us, could we help them do? So anyway, when we talked about this, we were out, and what happens on the roadside, there's no gas stations, there's nothing. And so we stop, and the men go over here, and I happen to be the only woman, and I can't go to the bathroom out in public, I've been told. And so I just have to go over here, just kind of stand and hold it. And so, until we get to a town. And so, I was standing over, sitting on a rock, and while the guys were doing their thing, because women don't go out and do that. And so, a little lady came out of the bushes, and she was selling some juices that were tea that she had gotten off a jujuberry tree and had made. And when the host saw her talking to me, because I could talk to her, they ran over and she skedaddled and ran for her life. So I don't know what she would, I mean, all I brought in were US dollars. We paid for our room, we paid for everything in US dollars, because that's what they wanted. So, I know we're getting past time, so I'm gonna give it back to Kathy, and she can come up with some clever ending. You're welcome.